Friends, relatives, cats, and kittens, welcome to 3 Count Commentary. This is the December Q&A session. Got quite a few questions. Some of them are very good. So I'm going to go through this. We got 2 different threads to read. So I don't know how long we're going to be here. I have no idea. Most of these questions, of course, I did not read in advance. So I will be coming up with answers as I go along, which means I'm probably going to be doing some extensive editing as I stumble and bumble if people ask me hard questions. So let's start. Our good buddy Synonymous TV. In your opinion, how far should a wrestler go to protect kayfabe and their character outside the ring, especially when it comes to being a heel? I think in the modern world, kayfabe is dead. Protecting the character, there really is no point to it. I just think that you can't go and come across as being very soft. And I think this is the kind of the rule that Seth Rollins broke, and this is the rule that Malachi Black broke. You know, Rollins saying that, oh, I was terrified of the fan coming after me. It kind of made people go, ugh. You know, it was the same thing when Malachi Black was crying over Black Lives Matter. People just kind of look at him like, are you serious? Like, you don't want to break your tough guy demeanor. But these guys are playing video games on TV all the time, on YouTube rather, on Twitch. They're talking too much. They're doing too many interviews. There's just no way to protect your character, you know. MJF is trying, but he comes across like a edgy tryhard, you know. So I really don't know how far guys should go. If you have a gimmick, like a hard gimmick, like a Joe Gacy, you probably shouldn't do too many interviews. That's the best way I think you would do it. It's just not to grant interviews and tweet in character. So that's the best you can do, especially if your account has your ring name in it. Like if it has your real name on it, I don't know, you know, do whatever you want. Some guys I saw at NXT, they had a WWE account and then they had their personal account. That was back when WWE told them to separate everything, back when they didn't want to take their Twitch accounts and they were just telling them to separate. There was guys who had a WWE account and a personal account. I know Mia Yim had one. The big hairy guy who got fired, he was Drake Maverick's tag team partner. He had one too. Big Damo, he had one too. Well, he had 2 Twitter accounts. So if you're a guy like Joe Gacy, tweet in character. That's the best you can do. Don't do interviews because people are going to ask you out of character stuff, and you shouldn't have to try to come up with that stuff on the fly. Trevin Dorn, what's your favorite DC animated movies? And do you get anything from Wwe Shop like replica belts, titles, or anything? My favorite DC animated movie is Under the Red Hood. That is tremendous. I literally just bought the trade on In-Stock Trades. It probably won't show up until February because that's how In-Stock Trades is. But I finally found the entire, I don't want to say if it's the omnibus of Under the Red Hood, but the origin story for the current Red Hood. It is excellent storytelling. It was the one DC animated movie that really got me into the DC animated movies. The Killing Joke got me out of it. Once I saw that they were going to start taking liberties with these characters and they went too far with having Batman and Batgirl having sex on the roof, I was like, fuck this. You know, I'm not going to participate in that. That's disgusting. I've always been weirded out by Barbara Gordon and Batman having sex. Like that's his buddy's daughter. Like that's gross as shit, you know. And Bruce is like in his mid-30s. But I did watch The Long Halloween. I did enjoy that. I didn't watch the second part. I watched the first part. I think I saw the TMNT Batman thing. I kind of like that too. Flashpoint was very good. But I think Under the Red Hood, without a doubt, is my favorite. Now, do I get anything from WWE Shop? No, I've been plotting on getting a title belt for a long time. I think I'm going to end up getting one whenever I go to a show. I'm not sure if they cost more in person or if they cost more online. I'm probably going to have to do a price check on that. But I do want a replica belt for the wall. I do want one. Mr. VXG, what is your favorite Hood movie? Oh, easily, Boys in the Hood. Without a shadow of a doubt, the original. Boys in the Hood is what spawned all of the knockoff Hood movies like Menace to Society, South Central, Higher Learning. Wait a minute, did Higher Learning come out before Boys in the Hood? I'm not sure. Boys in the Hood, now Higher Learning isn't quite in the same vein as Boys in the Hood, but it's, you know, it came out around the same time. So there was a lot of these movies that were, especially in the early 90s, these movies that focused on homeboys doing homeboy shit, like acting up in colleges, or which was Busta Rhymes. I think Ice Cube was in that movie too. I'm talking about Higher Learning. I liked Higher Learning. They had a crazy white supremacist. What was it? Michael Rappaport. That was his name. And he was shooting people. He ended up shooting Tyra Banks. Spoilers, but it was a pretty good movie. I thought it was weird to have. It's always weird when they start doing stuff with Nazis and stuff like that, and in the 90s and 2000s. It's like, man, are you really? Is there really a lot of Nazis around here? A lot of skinheads. I did love American History X. It was one of my favorite movies. It's not a hood movie though. It's just a movie. But this is a good question. I like that. Darren Miles, what's your favorite game console? Oh, the PlayStation 2, without a shadow of a doubt. The PlayStation 2 is the uncrowned king of gaming consoles. It was one of the first consoles I've ever had. Like, despite the fact that I grew up poor, I always had a Super Nintendo. I didn't really have too many games, but I had a Super Nintendo, and I had a PlayStation and a PlayStation 2. I never got the PlayStation 3. I did get an Xbox 360, and I enjoyed that, but that got me out of gaming. I was out of gaming by the time I really got into the Xbox. I still have it. I still have my Xbox. I bought an Xbox, a used one, from somebody. I barely played it. I don't really even have any games for it. Xbox 360, I have more games for that, and I played some games for it, but I didn't really gravitate and fall in love with the Xbox 360 like I did with the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 just had all my shit, like Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. I loved all of that stuff, man. That stuff was so much fun. I loved playing the PlayStation 2. All right, to the next situation. Mr. Dynamite Kid. He has 4 questions. Okay, number 1. If you could set up WWE's pay structure, what would it be? This includes bonuses. So I think that attractions, the Brock Lesnars, the guys who don't wrestle that often, the Bill Goldbergs, you need to prevent them from going somewhere else, but you can't overpay them. You have to pay them in accordance to what they draw. So if you have, those will be your highest paid guys anyway, because they're not regulars. And you can almost guarantee that the building is going to have more people in it with them on the show than what it is before. And then also if they are requested by people like Saudi Arabia or something like that. So you want to make sure those guys are available. You don't want them to do anything stupid like go on a hunting trip or anything like that, ride a motorcycle and break their goddamn ankles or something. You don't want them to do nothing stupid. So you want to pay them enough to where they will sit at home and stay in shape. So that would be the important thing. You want to make sure that certain guys stay under contract for video games, action figures, trading cards, that kind of stuff. Your special attractions. Those guys should be making over $2 million. I don't know how much they should be making. They say Brock makes 5. That seems fair to me. Maybe it's too much, but what's too much? What's too little? I think you should at least have $2 million set aside for your special attractions, your Brock Lesnar's, your Bill Goldberg's. Batista will be one of those guys. John Cena will be another one. The Rock is chump change to those guys. But that would be my bottom level. You at least get those guys $2 million to at least set aside for that. In the upper around that same bracket, you will also be looking at your higher level regular guys, your your Ortons, your Romans, those guys, because they've been in the business for a long time, or they're big draws. They're very important for your television product. So you definitely want to keep them paid. So if let's take the $2 million and bump it up to 3. So you would say Brock, Goldberg, Batista, guys who are going to be coming back, who you're definitely going to want to put in the video game. You're definitely going to want to make cards. You're definitely going to want to do merchandise of them. You should pay them something. It's for no other reason than to make sure that they are available when you want to do appearances. Your regular guys, you need them to draw your weekly television ratings. You also need them for your house shows. So that would be Roman, Orton, and guys like that. I can maybe Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, and those people. They should be at least making over $1 million, maybe 1.5 to 1.8 million. Mainly because they're going to be taking all the bumps, but you also need them for the same stuff. You need them to do Comic Cons. You need them to stay free. This is all inflated with exclusivity costs. Okay, you would do they would do Comic Cons, sign-in events, Make-A-Wish, all that stuff. Now you would just pay everybody accordingly. Down at the bottom, when you get somebody who's at the bottom of the structure, maybe somebody who just signed an NXT contract, I would not sign them to an exclusive deal. One thing I would do is tell them, all right, this is how much we're going to pay you to show up and to train at the Performance Center. That's your job. Your job is to train at the Performance Center and to improve, show improvement. But you can go and work non-televised independents. So if you want to go work some place in the middle of Illinois or something like that, go do it. You know, in fact, we insist that you go do it so you can get experience. So those people, I would not pay that much. You know, I wouldn't even pay them 6 figures, if we're being honest. It'd probably be in the mid 5 figures, maybe somewhere between $40,000 to $50,000. But that'd be a base pay. Then you'll tell them to go and make as much as they can on the independents. And then if you want to bring them up to NXT, then you make them sign an exclusivity deal, because then, you know, they have to be on hand to do NXT loops. Or if you're going to do that stuff, you're going to do house shows and all that stuff, you need to make sure that they're available. But if they're not going to be doing video games, they're not going to be in the video games, they're not going to be cards or merchandising of them, let them do whatever they want. And if somebody wants to get, like, you know, let's say there's a lower card guy on the card, like an Apollo Crews, and you're saying to yourself, look, I don't know what to do with this guy. You know, he says, oh, I got this, you know, I want to go and do this thing in Puerto Rico or something like that. Then you give him some money, you will make a deal with like whoever he's going to go work with, and what they make a deal, however they're going to pay him or something like that. But you would kind of loosen up the exclusivity. But the exclusivity is very important for your merchandising. So you can't get rid of that. But if you want to have a guy like Brock, you should pay them accordingly. There's quite a few guys you probably need them on the roster for Legends contracts and stuff like that. So all that needs to be taken into account. And it's a lot of those guys, because then you have Ted DiBiase, you've got Terry Funk, you've got all of those older dudes who, if they're not getting checks from WWE, it's a problem. Ric Flair, you know, I know that it may seem weird, but they are probably still sending royalty checks to a lot of guys who probably haven't worked there in a long time. The second question, how do you feel about NXT 2.0? I love it. I think it's great. The talent is very green, but it's interesting watching people who don't know what they're doing, more so than people who think that they know everything and they're fucking up. Like, that was nothing more frustrating to me than watching Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano, two guys who have over 10 years of experience, run around in circles and for 40 minutes and then get 5 stars and told it was the best match of all time. And I was just like, I would never watch this again. Like, there are times where I will literally go watch NXT 2.0 again, because the matches are not that long and the character stuff is usually pretty entertaining, rather than just, you know, 2 indie guys running around in circles. Like, I can't stand that shit. That's why I don't watch the independents, really. 3, if WWE worked with one promotion across each region, so Japan, to make it interesting, you could pick up New Japan and another promotion, Mexico, Europe proper, UK and US, not AEW, who would it be and why? The WWE and New Japan, that style does not, there's no crossover there. It's two completely different products, so it wouldn't work. AAA is good, but they have a relationship with AEW, so there's not much you can do there either. There has to be, I personally would look at Lucha Libre, mainly because Mexico is a market they've always been trying to get into. Japan is also a market they've been trying to get into. When it comes to Japan, you want to find somebody that can complement your style, but they're not too silly. Like, sometimes there's these Japanese promotions and they're way too silly, and you don't want WWE guys to get too involved with that stuff. You want them to be able to work in big buildings and in front of big audiences, but you can't just turn your guys into mechanics. And, you know, because certain guys like Cesaro might be able to do New Japan and just be just fine, but then you have to look at, you know, all your other people who are more character based, and you throw them in New Japan and they're gonna be like, wait a minute, what is all this crap? I have to do 45 minutes of match and we're just gonna chop each other in the chest and that kind of shit. You know? Stylistically, it's gonna be so different. In the United States, I would say WWE could probably benefit a lot from working with the NWA, also with working with Ring of Honor. Before Ring of Honor goes out of business or whatever, they should have been doing deals with them, if for anything else than getting their younger talent exposure. To me, that has always been the most important thing. You want to get your NXT talent more exposure. So you certainly should have been saying, all right, Billy Corgan and NWA is absolutely no threat whatsoever. They're not even on television. So sure, I will send my NXT talent there. Impact is not a threat, but it's on television. So maybe you're like, okay, maybe not. AEW, same thing. Ring of Honor is not even on television. Again, send your young talent there. Plus, they have a pretty good dojo in Ring of Honor. And I think that it helps to have a diversity of training for your talent too. And I say, like, look, if for nothing else, let them work. And Ring of Honor works a very mat heavy style too, but it's enough where it's not drastically different like it is in Japan. Number 3. Oh, that was the third question. Number 4. Lastly, what would New Japan have to do to be more prominent in the U.S. and potentially compete against WWE? Well, New Japan would have to nuke its entire core concept, which is being the king of sports. The fact of the matter is there's very few people who are interested in wrestling and when it comes to pro wrestling, you know, and that's the one thing Vince Russo said that is absolutely true. Wrestling is the matches itself are the draw for New Japan. It is what they lean heavily on. Guys can have zero charisma, go to New Japan and get over. But it's not going to work in the United States. It is not. Too many Americans are just going to say it's fake. They're not interested. They don't care. In order for New Japan to really get a foothold in the United States, they need something kind of like what they had with Bullet Club. That is pop culture that they can play off of, that they can push personalities. That is what Americans like. Americans like having personalities. We want TV stars, not necessarily great actors. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't a great actor, but he made all that money. You know, Sylvester Stallone, another one. You could probably name 1,000 better actors, but they weren't the personalities, the larger than life figures. That's what attracts American audiences, not wrestling. So they're not going to care that Kazuchika Okada is, you know, one of the better wrestlers in the world. They're not going to give a shit. They're going to look at him and say he has no personality whatsoever. And, you know, because he's a guy who wanted to wrestle since he was in high school. So, you know, he's like this machine, almost like the Beyonce of wrestling. Or, you know, I say Beyonce doesn't have much of a personality because she put all her focus into being a great entertainer, and it pays off in the end, just like it paid off for Okada. But it's just very difficult to translate to being a good personality, especially when you're not used to that. You're used to being a workaholic. All right, so Doc, do you think NXT properly prepares talents for the main roster? The Full Sail crowd gives them reactions, but when they get to the main roster, they struggle to get a reaction at all. I think the early days of NXT did not, because there was not enough promos, there was not enough character moments. There were some good matches, but again, I just said this, people don't care about matches, you know. So, you know, it was very difficult to get people to care about having good matches on American television. So no, I don't think they did prepare people for the main roster. And I think when you look at the people who did work when they came out of NXT, Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, Elias, so many others, they were able to adapt. Maybe they weren't the best in-ring worker, but they had great charisma, great personality, and that was able to, you know, give them the ability to adapt. Sami Zayn, when he first came out of NXT, he was just a happy-go-lucky babyface, and everybody loved him, thought he was great, thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and the audience didn't care about him if he wasn't standing in the ring opposite of Kevin Owens. And then it became a point to where he started finding his own voice, he started finding a character, a personality, and now he gets a pretty good reaction. So, no, I don't think NXT did a good job at first. I think they were dropping the ball by pushing their own in-ring product and trying to be different from the main roster. When you're the feeder system, your job is to feed. Therefore, you need to teach them what they need to do to succeed. And I don't think they did a good job with that at all. Now, there are times where WWE, of course, their creative drops the ball. But I think most of the time it was people who didn't have a character went to the main roster with no character and didn't get over. So how could you be surprised at that occurred when Americans are like, I don't care about your 5-star matches, you know, do something, dance, you know, sing or something. Nobody cares about that. Reality has 5 questions. Number 1, in one of your videos, you mentioned ECW being mostly bad with a few good nuggets here and there. What was some of your favorite moments from that company? Oh, number 1, without a shadow of a doubt, Raven and Sandman. The storyline where Raven takes Sandman's family. That was excellent shit. Tyler Fullington, the son, I think he was like 8 or 9, of the Sandman. Sandman's wife was in the business. I'm trying to remember what her name is. It's right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember it. But she was a manager in the business. And so she was not completely new to the business. But the son, you can't work with kids because kids will steal the show. But they did this thing where they had Sandman's son stand in the ring and says, you know, Daddy, you're a drunk. I worship Raven. It was great. It was awesome. That was fantastic. I loved that. It was real. You know, it was real. And Sandman's reaction, his acting, was actually pretty good. For a guy who drank beer and smoked cigarettes for the most of his time there, and he's a shit wrestler, by the way. He could do some agility-based stuff, but he was not good, if we're being honest. But his acting in this particular situation here was very good. It was excellent. You know, the heartbreak when his son told him that he worshiped Raven was really good stuff. The Tommy Dreamer Raven stuff I thought was very good too. And they brought in Beulah. That was good. The Beulah Stevie Richards stuff they were doing with her. It was kind of a love triangle, so it was kind of soap opera. But, you know, Raven got over anything because he knew what to do, and he was also silly, but he wasn't a silly character. He was a silly guy, though. So, you know, Raven was coming up with all this horse shit in the back and playing it straight when the camera was on. So he wasn't, like, laughing as they were doing this whole pregnancy angle or something like that. He wasn't, like, giggling through it. But you know he was having a fucking ball with it because it was nonsense and there was no reason for it to be any good. I liked a lot of the TV title stuff, especially the Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko stuff. I thought that stuff was very good. As far as just plain wrestling matches, phenomenal stuff. Late stage ECW, or let's say mid stage ECW, I really got a kick out of the Rob Van Dam Sabu tag team. I thought they were really fun together as an oddball tag team where Sabu always had this weird jealousy of other people that was not apparent to most people who weren't paying attention, but Sabu didn't like playing second fiddle to anybody. So it was a moment where Rob Van Dam would do something and then Sabu would try to top him, you know. And in the promo segments, Rob would always try to get in front of him to do the thumbs, and Sabu would kind of elbow him out of the way. So I thought that little dynamic was fun. Of course, the Sabu and Taz feud, I thought that was excellent. And it was very well done, too, because of the way Heyman didn't just throw them in there with each other. They built it up over time. And all the heat that Sabu had anyway from being a douchebag was very important. Taz winning the title was one of my favorite moments. I loved that. I loved Shane Douglas when he was the franchise. He was very fun too. His feud with Taz was fun. When they brought in the FTW title, that was fun. The Dudley Boys, of course. Just about anything involving the Dudley Boys, but not the early Dudley Boys. The early Dudley Boys was absolute trash. That's when they were doing the dances with Dudley, and they were being a comedy act. The Dudley Boys, as we know them, with Bubba Ray and Devon, was late stage ECW, when Bubba would go in the ring and just cut these incredibly offensive promos on people. And he was even calling people like the F word and stuff like that, and saying that daughters, you know, learn to suck dick from their moms and all this kind of wild stuff. It's just like complete and total insane stuff that they were saying. I particularly liked their matches with the Eliminators. I was really big on the Eliminators when I was a kid. That was one of the first ECW acts I saw was the Eliminators. They were very good. Let's see. 2. Who is your favorite superhero? Mine is Iron Man because of his constant struggle to be one. Captain America. I like virtuous characters. Captain America and Daredevil are my 2 favorite superheroes. For a long time, it was Spider-Man. But then when I really got into reading comic books, Daredevil became my favorite superhero. because Daredevil has a permanent handicap in that he's blind. Now they make it weird with the whole he has lasers or some shit in his brain, so he can see infrared or something like that, which is kind of cheating. Like I think he's better off just being blind. But the ninjas and all that kind of stuff. But the reason why I really like Daredevil and Captain America is that they're virtuous guys. You know, they stand up for something. And they're really great characters that play off of other characters very well due to their moral superiority. But yeah, Daredevil and Captain America, because they're so virtuous, how they interact with other characters make them so interesting. And they have so many other things that they could play off of. But Daredevil will probably be number one because not you have such a strong, because the world that he exists in. He's a pure man in a world full of grimy, disgusting people like the Kingpin and the Owl, and you know Elektra, who is his love interest. He loves her to death, but she's a fucking psycho murderer. You know, Black Widow, she's a double agent. He loves her too, but she's a backstabber and she's always running out on him and stuff like that. So it was always fun. And he was a character that, even though he was very moral and he was sort of morally superior to most people, he still had his own personal flaws. For instance, Daredevil, one of his weaknesses is that he's a ladies' man. He was constantly, he constantly had different chicks, and he had expressed guilt in certain stories about, his lady slaying ways. So I really enjoyed that. I really like Captain America, really like Daredevil. They're definitely my 1 and 2 as far as moral characters are concerned. Batman will be, of course, probably about 5 or 6. Iron Man is one of my favorite characters too. They played with Iron Man's his morality a little too much though. Even in the 80s, Tony Stark was kind of a guy who would cut some corners if he needs to. But he was always a guy who you kind of felt like he was on the right side, even if he did something that was particularly wrong or that you didn't really agree with. He kind of had a reason for it. But then later on, they just made him a straight up fucking villain. Like Civil War and everything afterwards, up into a point, I think, where they killed him. Did they kill him? They killed him like 2 or 3 times, so I can't really remember. But there was a point in time there where after Tony won the Civil War, Tony did win Civil War, by the way. Then he was essentially the villain to everybody in Marvel Comics after that. They had Thor beat him up. He was, because he made a fake Thor. So the real Thor found him and kicked his ass. Then, of course, he sent the Hulk, him and the rest of the Illuminati, they sent the Hulk to some strange planet. Then the Hulk came back and beat him up. Then it was, they did some other stuff with him too, where he was just getting kicked around by everybody. Because it was like, oh, Tony's a fascist. So, it was very difficult for me to sit through. Number 3, Miro is one of my favorites in AEW, and it seems that they have found his character in a weird spot currently. Where do you think he should go after losing in the tournament? I think the best thing for you to do with Miro is he is in need of redemption. His character is mad at God, but he also says that he can't go home without a championship. So what I think you do is now it's time to introduce Lana or CJ, whatever. And maybe you have her as a sort of, I don't want to say a dominatrix, but she is sort of there to to tease him and to say, accompany him to the ring and offer him some motivation, but to deny him the affection that he wants until he achieves what he needs to achieve. But I think that it would be very interesting to see them with each other, know them to the ring, and offer him some motivation, but to deny him the affection that he wants until he achieves what he needs to achieve. But I think that it would be very interesting to see them with each other, know that they're married, that you're not running from that, but you're creating a scenario where CJ can motivate him in his war against God or whatever. I think that's the next step, and I think that's the best thing you can do in order to rehab the character as far as the damage that they did to him. I don't see, if he wasn't going to win the tournament, he shouldn't have been in it, So, number 4, how would you get Malachi Black back on track after he leaves the Cody verse. For starters, I probably never would have put him in it, with being honest. But he needs to find somebody. We need to decide what the character is. For instance, what is Malachi Black? What is his motivations? If he was going to be a corrupter, let's say, almost like the Fiend, let's say similar to that, then you need pure baby faces for him to try to corrupt. If Cody was going to be one of those guys, and that's what the story that they were telling, is that Malachi Black was going to corrupt Cody, then he failed to corrupt Cody, but maybe there's someone else, Jungle Boy, or Sammy Guevara wouldn't work. Jungle Boy would have to be the guy. Darby Allin also wouldn't work. He's too nihilistic. So it will have to be Jungle Boy. You'll have to look at it and say, Jungle Boy is a very pure baby face. He's a kid with a dinosaur. And that's what they want you to believe. So what you would do is you would kind of just start, dropping hints. Maybe as Jungle Boy continues to fail, Malachi Black starts to trying to, win him over to the dark side, saying, hey, if, you could probably find more success if you cut corners here, if you, put your hands on the ropes there, pull the tights here. If you'd have did this or this, things could change. And you let Jungle Boy resist it, and I think that if he was going to be that kind of character, and that's what it seems like he's supposed to be, is a corrupting force in AEW. That's why they have the paint on his face. Then he needs to have pure baby faces for him to feed on. And that includes women too. So he needs probably like some females to be able to corrupt, to build a cult, if that's going to be the case. Let him go ahead and build a cult. I think that'd be the best thing for him. And then he can actually not wrestle as much and be kept as an attraction for special occasions. Number 5. Top 5 comic book issues that you have read. Oh, I suck at individual issues. But the night that Gwen Stacy died, I think that's with 2 issues. So that's 2 right there. But the story of Gwen Stacy dying, man, I read that shit like 25 years after it happened. And I knew Gwen Stacy died in the comics, but it was still very emotional. Very emotional. It was really sad. Another death. The girl Daredevil, when she got hit in the chest with the stick. It was the Kevin Smith Daredevil, if I remember correctly. She had what was her name? She was on the TV show. They did Daredevil Yellow, all about her. God damn it. The entire storyline though is that this chick, she's the one from the TV show. She loved Daredevil and he loved her. But then they had ran her through the mud. They had her taken her to Los Angeles, and she had done heroin, and she had become an AIDS, and she had done AIDS. Well, she had done AIDS. She had gotten AIDS and all this kind of stuff. And then she came back and was living with Matt, Matt Murdock is Daredevil. And she was living with him. And then this baby showed up, and Matt Murdock was going to murder the baby. Because it was, he was being driven crazy by Mysterio and everything, but he didn't know it at the time. And he was going to murder this baby. And wait a minute, am I mixing the storylines up? Because I'm pretty sure that was the Kevin Smith Daredevil, but I think this is a different angle. Her name is Karen, by the way. It came to me. She got killed in the comics, and I think she got killed by Bullseye, if I remember correctly. But that was very emotional too. I really thought that was very sad. I liked that issue. I also loved the fight between Black Bolt and what the fuck is his name? The third Summers brother. Vulcan from War of Kings. There's a there's an issue of War of Kings that features Black Bolt and Vulcan in a battle. Black Bolt, the king of the Inhumans, is invading Shi'ar space. Vulcan is a mutant from Earth, but was raised as a Shi'ar slave. He had gone back to the Shi'ar Empire and taken it over, and now the Inhumans are invading, and him and Black Bolt fight inside of a ship. And Vulcan is a what they call it, Omega level mutant, and he has almost complete inability to be hurt or killed. Like, he can regenerate. But Black Bolt has a voice that can destroy the moon. So there's these scenes in the comic where Black Bolt is screaming at Vulcan's face, and Vulcan's face is melting. And it was like, wow, it was really awesomely drawn. Great writing too. Very strange that Black Bolt's voice melted Vulcan's face, but of course he couldn't scream as loud as he wanted to because he would destroy the ship that they're in and then die out in the middle of space. But I really loved that issue of War of Kings. That was badass. I bought the entire omnibus of War of Kings just for that story. I read it through. I read it online first, and then I went and bought the trade because I loved it that much. And I actually became a pretty big fan of the Inhumans after that. Then they fucked the Inhumans up, so I lost interest in the Inhumans after that. Let's see what else we got here. Alt Wrestling fan TJ. If you were in charge of either AEW or WWE, what are some stuff you would do to help improve either company? AEW, you would just introduce basic storytelling into the show. I'm talking, story structures, beginning, middles, and ends. And, sure, it's at that point, you have to ask the question, is it a TV show or is it a wrestling show? If it's a TV show, which it is, by all wrestling shows are TV shows if they're on TV, you have to introduce a storyline at some point to the show, something that keeps people engaged in the show. AEW gives people a lot of opportunities to leave the show, which I'm surprised their ratings are so high. Even though I know the ratings are down, I'm surprised the ratings are what they are, considering they don't give you a reason to watch the next segment. It's almost immediately after these guys are done, they're almost never mentioned again. People will more watch this show if they introduce CM Punk in the opening segment, let's say, and he's, going back and forth with some guy or whatever, he's going to wrestle in the main event. So then they do something throughout the show to keep CM Punk, at least his name being mentioned throughout the show. And then at the end, you get the match that he's going to work. I think that'll probably be better off for them. For WWE, I would probably try to do something when it comes to utilizing the entire roster, which will probably be some type of talent rotation, which I think AEW does very well. Is that AEW, before they started putting Punk and Bryan in the first hour of every show, the first half hour at least of every show, they did a good job of, constantly bringing in fresh people. That's the one thing they do right is, you never see too many rematches. They do give away too many clean finishes, but you don't see too many rematches. WWE bogs you down in rematches and not enough in excitement. So we need WWE to add some excitement to the show. And part of that is keeping talent strong. So introduce maybe some jobber matches, because the matches don't matter in WWE. It's just guys go out there and take bumps, and it's completely and totally unnecessary. To be quite honest, people change the channel, whether it's Roman Reigns versus Finn Balor or Roman Reigns versus local guy. Most people are going to, if you don't want to watch the match, you don't care who the guy is wrestling. Now, some people will say, and smartly, if you put enough emphasis on the two guys that are going to be in the match, then the match will draw, which is absolutely true, but you can't do that on TV every week. You need to have at least one solid main event that goes 10 minutes or more. WWE consistently, especially on SmackDown, which is the highest rated wrestling show, will routinely have less than 10 minutes of wrestling on the entire show. It's just mostly commercials. That's a problem, and it's only a problem because there are people in the crowd, and if they don't get their money's worth when it comes to actual in-ring product, that becomes an issue. And that's really what we need to look forward to, is you got to be able to sell tickets. Like, sure, TV is important, but you need to be able to sell tickets too. And why sell people on the tickets to a televised wrestling show when it's just going to be piecemeal, 2-minute matches, and a bunch of guys looking at screens because it's going to be video vignettes and fucking commercials. So WWE needs to better use time and talent, while AEW needs to better use storylines. Those are two things that I would very mostly introduced into AEW. And I'll also cut down on some of the mark shit that AEW does, like mentioning WWE all the time, and you know, trying to improve their public relations. For WWE, there's nothing you can do. They have 30 years of skeletons in the closet. But for AEW, public relations should be very, very important, because it's the one thing that they have over WWE. So they don't have the baggage. You know, TNA racked up so much baggage so much faster than, because especially when Chris Candido died, and then you had the Daphne injury. There was a lot of stuff that was going on with TNA that turned people against it before they even got to the point of turning on them as far as not watching the show. Let's see. Another question. I feel like Santana and Ortiz should have been tag champs by now. Do you agree? Do you think AEW has dropped the ball in building up the tag team division? Absolutely, because the entire tag team division has been about the Young Bucks. And then after that, it was, we need to build up to the Young Bucks versus FTR. And their tag team division has been absolute shit since that match. Since the Young Bucks versus FTR, they did not have anything else for the tag team division. Sure, they've had good matches, but no storylines. I said before, they should have done something with Jurassic Express. They should be the tag team champions right now. This is why I mean when I say AEW does not care about storylines, and this is a big problem that I have with AEW. There is no excuse. No excuse why they put the belts on Lucha Brothers and not on Jurassic Express. The storyline was right there. You literally just cheated Jurassic Express out of the tag team titles. Literally like 2 weeks or something like that before this. And then they say, oh, we're going to have this eliminator tournament. And then Jurassic Express lost in the tournament. Like, what the fuck? Like, I know your question is about Santana and Ortiz, and I'll get to that in a second. But they don't care about stories. It was all about giving the Young Bucks, and the Young Bucks handpicked the Lucha Brothers as being the next guys. But yes, Santana and Ortiz should have at least been in the conversation by now. They haven't been anywhere near the tag team titles. In fact, I think Chris Jericho got tag team title shots in makeshift tag teams more so than Santana and Ortiz, as two tough, dudes got a shot. It's just nonsense, man. It makes no sense. They went to, Santana and Ortiz should have gotten a big push out of being in the inner circle. But it seems to me like they just used them as Chris Jericho's heavies. And that's pretty much it. But they're a very serious tag team. They are the Eddie Kingstons of the tag team division. The fact that these guys can't get a run or even get in the conversation is ridiculous. It's absolutely pathetic. And AEW should be chastised for their treatment of Santana and Ortiz. Those guys came from Impact red hot. They came from Impact hot. And I understand you might not have wanted them to be your first tag team champions, but they should have been at least contenders by now. And they even put the best friends above them. That sucks, man. It fucking sucks. Jesus Leva. This is off topic. What are your thoughts on the PlayStation 5 scalping situation? It's been going on since the console's release. All right, so I've seen a lot about scalping, and a lot of people get very upset when scalping exists. And there's two schools of thought on it. Usually there's two schools of thought. That the government should do something, and that the other is free market, bitch, get in where you fit in. Usually I fall in the free market, bitch, get in where you fit in stage. When it comes to people buying and scalping PlayStation 5s, how you hurt them is by not buying it. That's the most efficient way to hurt people who are scalping, is for there to be no market. Of course, the issue is there's always going to be a market. So the question is going to be, can people hold off on having PlayStation 5s to the point where the price of a PlayStation 5 plummets, and then the scalpers will lose more money than they will make? Because then they'll stop doing it. If you make it illegal, then what's going to happen is they're still going to do it. I saw that they're trying to ban scalping bots, which are like accounts that people set up so they can buy things almost immediately and buy out stock before anybody else can get them. For starters, they have to be rich in order to do this. So they would have to buy manually, which will of course cut down on their ability to hoard PS5s. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I just don't want the government to get involved. That's just kind of my thing. Is I think that scalping PS5s, it sucks. It's been going on for years too, by the way. It sucks, but I think the best way for people to handle it is for them to know that if you're not buying it from an official place, that you're probably buying it from a scalper, and to not buy it from them. So I think that you really should just make the scalpers pay, and make them pay with their own money. That's the best way to do it, is to just decide we're not going to buy it. We're not buying it from scalpers. If GameStop or whoever, Best Buy, whatever, Target, if they all sold out, then there are none. You know, if you start saying, well, I got to have it, then you can go to the scalpers and the scalpers will give it to you, but it's probably going to be at an inflated cost. And then you're playing right into their game because they're going to benefit from it. So I think it'd be smarter to tell people not to just not buy things from unofficial retailers. Just don't do it. Alto Johnson. Question. He got 4 questions. 1, do you think Triple H and Stephanie will start their own wrestling promotion? Why on earth would they do that? Stephanie doesn't know shit about running a wrestling promotion either, so I don't understand why she would even do it. She'd probably finance it. But no, I don't think so. I think the WWE is perfectly fine. It's a family business. I don't think Stephanie would even run opposition against WWE. That sounds ridiculous. 2, have you ever gone to any rock concerts? Not any rock concerts, but I've been to a few rap concerts. Number 3, was Detroit always conservative strong? Absolutely not. Detroit is one of the most liberal cities in the fucking United States. The people are conservative, but the government is liberal as shit. And to be quite honest, Detroit is fucked because of that reason. And I'm going to be honest with you. Most cities are that way. If you walk down the average street in Detroit and you start asking people questions about do they trust the government? Absolutely not. Should the government be running X, Y, and Z? Absolutely not. You know, they'll probably say no. But when it comes to voting, they don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. They just hear, we need better schools. We need, fresh water. We need, so-and-so is a racist. And then they go and they vote because all they care about is voting against racism, keeping black people in power, which is a big issue in Detroit. It's a fucking cancer. That concept is what caused a lot of the rot in Detroit in the first place. So no, Detroit is not a conservative, strong place at all. It's liberal as shit in terms of government, but it's not conservative at all. It's conservative in terms of the people, but not in terms of the government. The government is involved with every goddamn thing. You can't tear down a building in Detroit without the government. You can't do anything, man. I literally sat in some of these meetings whereas, somebody was trying to open up a plant. Maybe it might have been a plant. It might have been something else. And they had to sit there and justify to city council how many jobs they're going to create and what are these jobs going to pay. And, how are they going to, bring the unions into this? And I was kind of like, what the fuck? Just let the guy start his goddamn business. And then he can figure the rest of that shit out as we go along. Like Detroit fucked themselves out of Amazon by not having a good educational system and not having a good transport system. Both of those things are run by the government. So when Amazon was like, oh yeah, we were going to build our headquarters in Detroit, but then we looked at the literacy rate, which is a dog shit, by the way. Most Detroiters are functionally illiterate. I think it's like 40 some odd % of Detroiters can't actually read. They're like functionally illiterate. It means they can get around, but that's about it, and that's because decades upon decades of shitty schooling, shitty government schooling in Detroit. There's constantly people, there was 3 or 4 people from city council just within the last year that have had FBI raids on their homes. There's still people in Detroit who are like, oh, I wish Kwame would come back. It's like, come on, man, get the fuck out of here with that. what Alto Johnson's fourth question? How do you describe a vanilla giant in professional wrestling? Look at Luke Gallows. You know, guy has no personality. He's tall, but he has no personality outside of being tall. You know, there's quite a few of those guys in the NBA. You know, those guys don't make it far at all in wrestling. You know, you being tall will get you an opportunity, but you don't have any personality as a big guy. You know, it's actually harder for you than if you have no personality as a smaller guy. Our boy Sonomius TV is back. Number one, he got 3 questions. How would you have booked Karrion Kross's Raw debut? Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question because I get to script doctor a little bit. Here's what I would have done. I would have had Scarlett come to the ring with the sand clock, and the moment the champion defended the title, whoever it could have been, she puts it on the ring apron. Boom, just turned it over and just watched the sand trickle down. Everybody would have known that it was Scarlett from Karrion Kross. You would have just had it TikTok, and that would have been it. That's how I would have debuted him. Every week, there would have been a little bit more sand in the hourglass. And she wouldn't have said a word. She just would have come out during the champion segment. If he's cutting a promo, lights would go out. She walked to the ring or just stand on the stage and hold it up. And then as the sand becomes less and less, Kross's face, tick-tock. And then over time, tick-tock, tick-tock, until there's no more sand in the hourglass. Then he would have showed up. That would have been a great way to do it because you're building anticipation. Everybody would have known who it is. You would have known who he's going against. You would have known why. Everything would have made perfect fucking sense. You wouldn't have needed to do anything extra. You would have had Kross and Scarlett, right, together. They wouldn't have had to deal with the character stuff or, you know, helmets and the rest of that shit. You wouldn't have needed to do any of that. All you needed to do was have Scarlett show up with an hourglass and taunt whoever the champion was. Even if it was even if it was Bobby Lashley, I still would have done it. He wouldn't have mattered. And then if you could have still done Big E wins the title from Bobby Lashley and still Scarlett shows up TikTok. Doesn't matter. At that point, you know what the deal is. He's going wherever the title is. So that's how I would have debuted him. And then eventually, after a couple of weeks, I would have had him come out there and maybe even attack the champion just, you know, as the lights turn on, Kross is there, you know, he blasts him with the big elbow or the Doomsday Saito or something like that. And then he says, tick-tock, and we go off the air. That would have been it. I would have introduced him through Scarlett, through all of his gimmicks without him physically being there. 2, have you ever seen Doctor Who? Absolutely, I have seen Doctor Who. I am not a Whovian as much as everybody else is, but I am familiar with the Doctor Who lore. I watched the David Tennant Doctor Who. I didn't watch the recent, the female Doctor Who. I heard it was pretty bad. And BBC America I don't think they really had it. I was watching Doctor Who mostly. And was that show where Orphan Black? I was watching both of those shows on BBC America. Back when BBC America was actually fun, which was probably like 3 years ago. So, yes, I have watched Doctor Who. It's a fun show. You know, the Cylons are pretty bad at... Not Cylons. That's Battlestar Galactica, right? It's, what the fuck? The machines. The machine people that they fight is pretty dope. The storyline where everybody had to stay happy. Oh, that was so creepy. I love that. They started doing weird stuff later on, you know, where the agenda started coming in, and it became less fun because it became less about the adventure and more about, you know, preaching to people, and I'm not about that at all. His third question: who do you have for winning the Royal Rumble this year? So Damian Priest would probably be a good guess to win the Rumble. He's in a good spot. He's been champion for a long time. They haven't forgotten that he's the champion, which is a good thing. Hopefully they don't go back to Drew McIntyre. They don't need to do that. Hopefully they don't do something even dumber than that, like Brock Lesnar. You don't need anybody who is established already to win the Royal Rumble. You know, you want to try to establish somebody new. So I probably would go with Damian Priest. And for the men. For the women, I don't know. Because it's going to be very hard to, you know, you could have Bayley. I don't know if Bayley will be back yet. But you could, that's an option for your women's Royal Rumble winner. If she's going to be able to come back. You're also going to be, because again, they gave Rhea Ripley the belt. See, there's at least 2 or 3 people, you know, Bianca and Rhea for the women. It was Keith Lee and Karrion Kross for the men. But the men's, of course, their side is fucked because they fired those 2 guys. So now you got Bianca, who could repeat as the Royal Rumble winner, and you got Rhea Ripley. I think smart money would say Rhea Ripley wins the Royal Rumble this year for the women. And only because I think that personally the big match is Rhea versus Becky. I think that's the match, especially for the Raw side. SmackDown, I have no clue, you know, because they don't really book too many people strong on SmackDown other than Charlotte and Sasha, which is also why I say maybe Bayley. But I think Rhea Ripley, because she got close to winning the Royal Rumble in 2020, and I think she should win it in 2022. Well, she got close to winning it in 2021, rather. I think she should win in 2022. The men's side, I'm going to go with Damian Priest. I'm going to go with Damian Priest. Let's see. King Smark. You got 3 questions. What are your 5 worst WWE World Champions? Oh, good Lord. They would probably all be ECW champions. Chavo Guerrero is on the list. He sucks. Ezekiel Jackson is another one. He also sucked. The great Khali, who's the World Heavyweight Champion, he sucks. I mean, he had to win the belt because he's a giant. So, but he's also a giant, so he didn't really need it. You know, he should have been an attraction on his own. His matches weren't any good. So that's 3. It would be easy for me to pick on the ECW title because the belt is so whack. But you know, Vince, I'm not gonna say Vince. He would be an easy one too to say Vince. Let's see. Jack Swagger, absolutely. Jack Swagger is 4. He was the World Heavyweight Champion and he was ECW Champion. He sucked at both of them. To be quite honest, I'm going to admit that I thought Jack Swagger was going to be a fun World Champion. Because if you go back to when before Swagger won the belt, and he was doing the Swagger soaring eagle, and him and the eagle were running around in circles being silly, I thought that version of Jack Swagger was actually fun. And I thought he was going to be that as the world champion. Maybe not as comedic, but I thought he was going to be that as world champion. Then they made him super serious where he was putting on a flat affect, like he was medicated or something like that. It was awful. It was terrible. So I got 4. It's got to be a 5th one in there somewhere. It'll probably come to me later. His second question, is AEW a lot like 2000s TNA in your view? Yes. Yeah, it is. It is a lot like TNA to me. To be quite honest, the reason why it's like TNA is because TNA was all about the smaller talent, the younger talent, and then they started getting all the WWE guys, and then it became, you know, get in where you fit in, small young talent, you know, get in where you fit in, small young guys. But it was also started by Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett was a guy who had no business being in the main event of a major American wrestling promotion, even if he is a good talent, which he is. And AEW, the Young Bucks have no business being the focal point of a show. Kenny Omega doesn't either, if we're being honest. They tried to be smart by putting Jericho out there as the first guy, but everybody knows that it was the Cody and Omega and Young Bucks show, and Jericho was just a champion, just a guy to sort of lubricate you into getting into watching the show, make it easier for you to watch the show by, oh, it's Jericho. Look, everybody knows who George Jericho is. Yeah, it was a trap. You know, TNA didn't have a trap. It was just Jeff Jarrett all the time. You know who Jeff Jarrett is, and if you know who Jeff Jarrett is, that's why you didn't watch TNA. 3, what wrestling promotion today doesn't get talked about or praised as much? Ring of Honor before it, you know. So like that was easy. Ring of Honor was the one. Reality of Wrestling is another one. Booker T's promotion. That's I like both of those. You know, I watch them every week. They're very wrestling heavy, but they still do have characters. They still do have people who play characters, and they're fun to watch. You know, and they're easy to watch. That's usually a thing that most wrestling promotions struggle with, is making their show easy to watch. Darren Miles is back. What's your thoughts on the Ruthless Aggression era? Oh, baby. Since I missed most of it because I was pissed at wrestling and not watching it, I had to go back and watch it. So after going back to watch it, I like that it clearly defined what it was going to be. And then it was that. You know, Ruthless Aggression era was a hard break from the Attitude era. But it took a lot of the stuff that was in the Attitude Era and turned the volume up. So there was more, the Attitude Era had, you know, tits and ass, but it didn't have hot lesbian action. All of that stuff they started doing in the Ruthless Aggression Era, it was taking stuff to the next level. That's when they started doing Katie Vick. They started being purposefully offensive. They did the Billy and Chuck wedding. They were doing stuff that was just flat out ridiculous, you know, in the Ruthless Aggression era. But it's where they introduced the brand extension, which I really enjoy. I know a lot of people hate the brand extension. I like it. Again, it gives more opportunities to more people. At the same time, it forced people to buy pay-per-views that featured Orlando Jordan in 10-minute matches. So I don't know what to tell you. The Big Four events were pretty good, though. You know, the SummerSlams usually were pretty good. SummerSlam 2002, my favorite SummerSlam. 2004 was also pretty good, if I remember correctly. If I'm remembering the card right. Who main evented that show? Benoit and Orton. Yeah. You know, Undertaker and, what's the name? Bradshaw. Didn't care for that match, though. So WrestleMania was usually good for, you know, during the Ruthless Aggression era. And SummerSlam and Survivor Series and the Royal Rumble were really good. Were usually pretty good. Now, Raw was getting on my goddamn nerves. I almost hated watching Raw around this time because they were just doing shit. And it was like, there was a point in time when it comes to Ruthless Aggression era and Raw where it was just a Triple H Shawn Michaels show and everything was about their feud for 2 fucking years. It was like Shawn came back in mid 2002, like it was August 2002, right? So until, what was it? They had that silly, just completely self-indulgent 45-minute Hell in a Cell match in 2004, or was it 2003? It was 2004, wasn't it? They had that Hell in a Cell match because the Hell in a Cell match 2003 was Kevin Nash. So yeah, it was Triple H and Shawn Michaels. That match made me so fucking mad. I've never been outside of the ring. I've been mad at Shawn Michaels, but inside the ring, I have never been so pissed at Shawn Michaels before. That match was so self-indulgent. It was so long. It was so stupid. I hated it so fucking much. I hate that Triple H Shawn Michaels thing so fucking much. They literally tried to steal Chris Benoit's moment by injecting Shawn into that match. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. The Scott Steiner stuff, he got fucked over because they had to interject Shawn Michaels. I hated it so much. The constant triple threat matches between Shawn and Triple H and usually somebody else. What was it? Kurt Angle one time? It was, you know, it was also John Cena one time. Everything, and I hated it so much. Fuck. I hate it so much. I couldn't stand it. I could not stand them two guys, man. They were getting on my goddamn nerves. It was horrible, you know. And the matches weren't even bad. Like, I liked the last man standing match that they had. I thought that was very good, you know. But it ended in a draw, if I remember correctly. And I was kind of like, these two guys just won't get out of each other's way. They intend to feud forever. Okay, they just intended to feud forever, and I could not stand it. I could not stand it. Shawn's whole second run with him palling around with Triple H in one way or the other. You know, I couldn't stand it. I could not stand it. So Raw was very hard for me to watch. Plus, Raw was very dry around this time too. They were just doing a lot of. I liked Evolution though. I really liked Evolution because I liked watching Randy Orton develop. Batista too, to a lesser degree, but I loved watching Randy. Randy was very good as a legend killer. He was the star of the show for me as far as guys on Raw. I thought he was the most fun. Rob Van Dam, was a big thumbs up for the Ruthless Aggression era. I think they gave him the title too late. Same thing with Booker T. They waited until during the Cena era, which was 2005, 2006, to give them belts. But what can you do? But the Ruthless Aggression era was fine. SmackDown was really good. SmackDown was killing it. They were doing great. SmackDown 6, they were killing it. It wasn't until right around the PG era, they went PG in 2009. So for about 7 years, the Ruthless Aggression era, it was fine. I didn't have any problems with it. I think that it was a kind of a try-hard era where it was the last vestiges of all the things that you thought were going to be fun in wrestling. The guys bleeding every week, people cussing and outrageous storylines like Triple H fucking corpses. But at the same time, that goddamn Triple H Shawn Michaels feud, it makes my nose bleed just thinking about it. It makes me so mad. Black Saiyan 97. Any wrestlers you think are overrated or overhyped, old and new? Oh, there's a lot of them. There's quite a few that I think are overrated. It's I'm gonna get some heat, but I was never a fan of The Rock. I think The Rock had a great personality. He is what you want from a pro wrestler. He's big, he looks good, he talks great, he's got a great sense of humor, awesome public relations guy. But I just did not like The Rock character because I did not like what The Rock did to other people. I didn't like his interactions with other people usually. The Rock had fun when he was dealing with undercard guys. Like his stuff with the Stasiak kid. Funny. His stuff with the Hurricane. Funny. Good stuff. His stuff with The Undertaker. I hated it. Hated all of it. I never liked any matches between The Rock and The Undertaker. They didn't have good chemistry as far as I'm concerned. His stuff with Hogan when he was burying Hogan. Didn't really care for that. Like, how do you try to bury Hulk Hogan? Like, it was... you have to be The Rock to try to bury Hulk Hogan, right? So there were certain issues of me and The Rock. I teeter on it because I understand that The Rock is what everybody loves about wrestling. Rightfully so. He's the blueprint. But at the same time, when I go back and watch, or I think about matches that I really want to watch again, none of them involve The Rock. And I just have zero interest in reliving too much of what The Rock actually did in the ring. And I did like a lot of his undercard stuff when he was like Intercontinental Champion. I enjoyed a lot of that stuff. Before The Rock was really turned up to 25 and became super annoying with his 15-minute stand-up promos. I enjoyed a lot of that stuff. Like when he was wrestling Triple H for like the Intercontinental title and the strap match that they did, which is my favorite Triple H Rock match. And I think the 2 out of 3 falls match they had too was also very good. But when The Rock became a certified, bona fide main event guy, almost anything that involved him and Triple H, I was kind of trying to avoid it. Him and Undertaker, I definitely avoided it. But him and Steve Austin were, of course, phenomenal. Another guy, Yokozuna. I was never a fan of Yokozuna. A lot of people talk very, up about Yoko. I grew up during that New Generation era, and I wish till there's breath in my body that Yoko was not the champion for most of that time. Because I look at it and think that, man, we missed on having sort of the last run of Randy Savage. And we missed on having, sure, you had to have somebody for Hogan to lose the belt to, because Hogan wasn't going to lose the belt to any of the smaller guys he wanted to push. So Yoko made sense in that respect. But Yoko versus anybody was not on my list of favorite matches that I wanted to go back and watch, or characters that I was really all that interested in. I am currently very critical of Kazuchika Okada as well. Okada is a robot. And I say that literally all the time. He is an absolute robot. He's a great wrestler for mechanic purposes. He's got a good look. He's a big dude. He's not like this small Japanese guy. But he has almost zero personality. I like Tanahashi though. Tanahashi shows personality. He shows grit. He shows fire. Okada can do that, but Okada's very cool. He's very laid back. You know, he has moments where he shows some passion, but you know, for the most part, Okada's too laid back. He's too cool. I'm so critical of Okada. Some people have told me to stop talking about New Japan. Kenny Omega, it would be easy for me to say Kenny Omega. I've been very critical of Kenny Omega. I liked Kenny Omega when he was a junior champion. He reminded me a lot of Brian Pillman to a degree, as far as his moveset was concerned and his abilities. And then he got on the gas and they pushed him to the top spot. And he was still having good matches. But when people was acting like he was having, you know, the most badass matches that have ever taken place in a ring, I was kind of like, wait a minute. You know, they're not that good. You know, like, he's good. But is he Eddie Guerrero? No. Is he Shawn Michaels? No. Is he Ricky Steamboat? No. You know, but he's got like 3,500 5-star classics, and people kept sending me links like, oh, you need to watch Kenny Omega have this Iron Man match or whatever the fuck it was with Okada when they was wrestling for an hour. And I'm like, what? This match is an hour. What the fuck is going on, bruh? But match ended up being fine, you know. But I'm just very critical of Omega because his charisma is in terms of I don't think he's also that influential either. I think that people mostly overrate his influence. I think he's a good worker. And I think that if he was a guy that they had not overhyped him, people would talk about him a lot more as being a very, very good performer. You know, but I just very critical of some of the stuff that he did. I Hate Anti-Smarks has 3 questions for me. What are your thoughts on anti-smarks? I don't know what an anti-smark is. I think that it's a weird title that people get. I've been called an anti-smark because I criticize the supposed smark YouTube channels like Cultaholic and What Culture and all them. If those are the guys that we consider smarks, then I consider myself an anti-smark, I guess. But are those guys anti-smarks? I don't know. I think that as long as you're consistent, it really shouldn't matter that much if you're a smark or an anti-smark. I don't believe in, you know, like I said, we talked about smark busters doing this kind of stuff that they do. I'll talk to the guys on Twitter if because I can talk to them directly and they can respond directly. But there are certain, you know, smark fans that I don't find particularly useful in the wrestling space. Why do Crappy Cross and Bearcat Leafs suck? I think they just came at the wrong time. You know, both of those guys are in their mid-30s. They're not in the tip-top shape. Lee Cross was good, I think. I just think that the fans, he just did not connect. It wasn't because he was wearing a helmet. It was because it was even there in a bit in NXT where there was a point where they turned on him. And I think Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole had a lot to do with the way the audience absolutely fled Karrion Kross. I think they have a lot to do with why NXT needed to get blown up too, you know. But Keith Lee, I think it was weight, it was age, you know, bad habits, stuff like that. And he also asked the question, what's the worst wrestling promotion you've ever seen? Oh my goodness. Does Wrestling Society X count? Because if it does, then Wrestling Society X, it's awful. You know, it's absolutely awful. They were powerbombing each other into Shark Tanks and shit like that. It was stupid. XPW was also pretty fucking stupid. What else? I've seen a lot of wrestling, man. It's hard for me to sit here. There was a wrestling promotion. I want to say it was called the UWF. I'm not entirely sure, though. They had rounds. It was a round system. You had to win 2 out of 3 falls. It used to come on TV back when I was a kid. I remember Sergeant Slaughter being there. I don't remember what it was. I think it was called UWF. It was some of the worst horse shit I've ever seen, too. There was a lot of bad wrestling out there, man. It's a lot. E Supreme. I'm scared for WWE's future because when all the legends like Orton, Mysterio, Cena, etc. retire or leave, how can WWE build young stars? And yes, I know there's NXT, but if they come up, what if they get buried? Like, look at Tony Storm and Ripley. They're not going to have the push that I thought they were going to get. Also, the creative, wrestlers, smarts management, and social media is to blame because with all that, wrestling is not the way it used to be. Do you agree or disagree? I disagree with being worried about WWE. I think that most people, and this is the crazy thing, most people said WWE is going to be in the toilet after Cena leaves. And then they transition from Roman's the best thing on the show, from when Cena leaves, everything's going to suck, to Roman's the only thing they got. That transition was pretty seamless. There was so many people who were still saying, like, Roman sucks. He's never going to be the draw that Cena is, and Roman's never going to be the guy. He's never going to get over. Now it's, Roman's the only guy on the show. He's the only reason you're supposed to watch the show. He's the only guy. It's like, it was seamless. And it's going to be, WWE usually doesn't do hard resets as far as changing up the guard. The new generation era was a hard reset. And this seems to be a hard reset where they're getting rid of, actively kicking out guys who are, the old era. When they got rid of Bray Wyatt, I was like, something's going on. To me, that was the one that tipped things. Because I'm like, Bray Wyatt is, he's like in his mid-30s. And you're firing him? Why? And this feels like a lot like the new generation era, where Hogan was gone. Then you're like, wait a minute. Okay, I can learn to respect that Hogan is gone. But then Piper is also gone. Jake the Snake Roberts is also gone. Ted DiBiase is also not really. He's there, but not really. Then Randy Savage is on commentary. Then he's gone not too long after that. And then by 96, Mr. Perfect is also gone. And you're like, wait a minute. There's almost the entire mid card of a few years before is gone. You got to bring in a whole new crop of guys. And that's what seems to be what they're going on right now. The Attitude Era had another hard break when Austin left, and then The Rock kind of diminished, and he was kind of going away. He was still present, but he wasn't as present as he used to be. But then you started seeing familiar faces come back, like Hogan, like Nash, like Goldberg. You started seeing those guys come in. And so you have a similar thing going on now, whereas a guy starts to wind down. Cena is starting to wind down. Once Cena is completely gone, I think the floodgates will be opened for more guys to just plain go. And I think at that point, Edge will leave. Once Cena is really gone, I think Edge is going to be gone. Orton's going to be gone not too long after that. And, I don't think Roman's going to be around much longer either. And, he's kind of already dropped the seeds that he's probably not going to be doing this at 42, 43 years old. Rey Mysterio, I'm surprised he's still there right now. Rey doesn't need the money. I think he's doing this just to get Dominic's career started. Once Dominic really starts catching on, he's probably going to end up going anyway. And Jeff Hardy and guys like that, once they're gone, there'll just be new guys. That's kind of how it is. They probably won't be some of these guys may become big stars, but there's always going to be that nostalgia that's going to make you believe that the other guys were bigger stars. Or, they're not going to be able to replace anybody. And I think as long as WWE stops trying to replace people, they've always tried to replace people and always failed. They tried to replace Hogan with Lex Luger. That's a failure. They tried to replace Brock with Batista. That didn't work either. Even though Batista ended up being a star in his own right, it kept being, we're going to replace him with he's going to be a replacement for Brock. Bobby Lashley was another one that was supposed to be like Brock's replacement. That didn't work out either. They tried to replace Ray with Kalisto or Sin Cara or anybody else. It's never going to work. You can't just replace people. Their role cannot just be replaced. You have to find a new niche. Like Jeff Hardy's fans are Jeff Hardy's fans. You're not going to be able to just create, another Jeff Hardy. Jesus Leyva is back. Who is your favorite tag team? Mine was the Mega Powers. Mine, of course, is the Road Warriors. You cannot be born in the 80s, raised in the 90s, and not think that the Road Warriors fucking rule. Road Warriors, Demolition. I even caught the tail end of the Rock and Roll Express. And those three teams right there, man, I love them. I love the Road Warriors, man. They were larger than life. Some of the first action figures I ever got were the Road Warriors. I got Road Warriors and the Ultimate Warrior before I got a Hulk Hogan. That's how. And my favorite wrestler was still Macho Man, and I couldn't find a Macho Man toy. But the Road Warriors, without a shadow of a doubt. SummerSlam '92. Never forget that shit. I'll never forget when they came to the ring on them bikes. I didn't give a damn about the puppet. Like, it was all the adults who were talking about, oh, the puppet is so silly. I didn't care about the puppet. They're badass dudes on bikes. They fucking rule. And then as an adult, I got to go back and watch a lot of the stuff that they did. They fucking rule, man. They're not the greatest in-ring workers of all time. But when you listen to Hawk and he's cutting a promo, he's talking about deviating septums. And he's like, we snack on danger and we dine on death. He's like, what? I believe him. The roids and the coke is talking directly to me, man. I fucking love those guys, dude. They fucking rule. Bennett X100. Who is your top 5 wrestlers today? He's got 5 questions. Top 5 wrestlers today if I had to pick 5. Oh. This is hard because I don't hate everybody. But I just don't. I don't have a favorite wrestler. But I do have guys that I really like. I really like Seth Rollins, for instance. I think Seth Rollins is a great. He's not the best promo in the world. He's a very annoying promo, which I think is actually helping his character. But I like his in-ring work. I really, really enjoy his in-ring stuff. You know, Rollins doesn't have bad matches. He doesn't. He nails his matches every single time. So Rollins is one of them. Finn Balor is another one. Big fan of Finn Balor as well. When they use him correctly, he's one of my guys. Our Lord and Savior, Bryan Danielson, really big fan of him too. It's hard for him to have a bad match too. You know, really don't have bad matches when it comes to Bryan Danielson. I need 2 more. Roman Reigns had to come in. I'm a really big fan of his character work, with the story that he's constructing. Big fan of that. Of course, Brock. So that's 5 right there. And Brock is always going to be one of my guys. What is your top 5 matches of all time? Oh, Steamboat Savage WrestleMania 3 is one of my top 5 matches of all time. That's easy. Steamboat Flair. I believe Chi-Town Rumble. What year was that? 1988? Not 88, because Steamboat was in WWF. Was it 89? Chi-Town Rumble, I'm sure that's the one, the 2 out of 3 falls, where Flair won the title back. Or was Chi-Town Rumble when Steamboat won the belt? I think Chi-Town Rumble is the one where Steamboat lost the belt. The one where Steamboat won the belt was very good too. I really enjoyed that. Enjoyed the shit out of that match. Mr. Perfect, Bret the Hitman Hart, SummerSlam 1991. Probably the greatest Intercontinental Championship match of all time. One of my favorite matches of all time. Mr. Perfect, Bret the Hitman Hart. Let's see. What's another one? Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania. I like the first one, WrestleMania 25. Really enjoyed the shit out of that match. 26, I think, was kind of marred because we knew Shawn was leaving. I knew Shawn was leaving, so but it was still a fantastic match. And in some ways, it's better than 25. But that first Shawn Undertaker WrestleMania match, tremendous. I don't even see why they tried to top that. They should have put them on last. 2. And I love Bret Hart versus Owen Hart from WrestleMania 10. So I have so many favorite matches that it's hard to get down to 5. But the 3 I can tell you for sure are on the list. Hitman Perfect from SummerSlam 91. Without a shadow of a doubt, that is one of my favorite matches of all time. Savage Steamboat, without a shadow of a doubt. And Steamboat Flair, without a shadow of a doubt. And you can pick whichever one you want, but I like the Chi-Town Rumble match. That was my favorite. If you had Bennett X100 also asked the question, if you had to pick any superstar to become world champion, who would it be? Finn Balor. Right now, it'll be Finn Balor or Bobby Lashley. I want to give the belt back to Bobby Lashley. So. But I think that as far as somebody who's never been world champion before, it'll be Finn Balor for sure. I just think that there's a lot of money on the table for Finn Balor being the champion right now. What's your favorite wrestling storyline? Oh, Undertaker and Kane, without a shadow of a doubt. Undertaker and Kane, because they created an entire new mythology. They they didn't just kayfabe stuff that exists. They kayfabed family, bloodline, affairs, murder. There's all kinds of shit in that storyline. I'm going to be doing a Roots of Storytelling on that eventually. But Undertaker and Kane, tremendous storyline. The Mega Powers exploding would probably be second. Third would probably be Andre and Hogan. The turn when Andre turned on Hogan. That was chef's kiss. Fourth probably be the NWO and Sting. I love that too. Can't go wrong with the NWO and Sting. That was tremendous. Because I include Sting leaving WCW when he told the fans to stick it and left. I include that into that storyline because that was when Sting's origin story as a hero was that he was coming back to help WCW, and WCW had pretty much turned their back on Sting. So I have to add that in. What's your favorite female wrestler of all time? Oh, Sherry Martel. Sherry Martel for sure. I've gone back and watched a lot of Sherry's matches in AWA and some of her matches from WWF on the house show loop. And Sherry was really good. Sherry does not get nearly enough credit for how good she was as a wrestler. And she was very underutilized as a wrestler in the WWF. And I heard, and some people have said that Luna and Sherry and Sherry and Alundra Blaze were supposed to work together, and things happened where Sherry ended up getting fired because of, she was on drugs and all that kind of stuff. But Sherry in the 80s, she worked a house show loop with Rockin' Robin. Rockin' Robin, the little sister of Jake the Snake Roberts. Rockin' Robin was green as shit. She was green as baby shit. But those matches with Sherry were actually pretty good because Sherry knew what she was doing. You can watch Sherry in some matches with Medusa, Alundra Blaze. They wrestled in the AWA. They had some pretty good matches. So Sherry will probably be my favorite female wrestler of all time. Darren Miles is back with the last question. Why do you think John Cena gets so much hate? I think that people hated John Cena because he was a white meat babyface. And being a white meat babyface gets you a lot of heat because people think that you're not being real. They seem to think that it's the same thing with Superman and Captain America and Daredevil. And some people don't like characters that uphold any type of moral standard. Cena wasn't always that guy. He would drift into bullying sometimes, like when him and Jerry the King Lawler did that roast session on Ricky Guerrero. I love that segment, by the way. It makes so many people cringe, but I love that segment. When Cena told Vicky Guerrero she was so fat she woke up in sections, I died, bro. It was great. But Cena came across as very, very superhero-y, very colorful. People thought he was a cartoon character, and they thought there was something phony about Cena, and that's the reason why so many people didn't like him. They don't like Superman. They don't want any more Hulk Hogans. They don't want any more Ultimate Warriors. They want everybody to be muted shades of gray, or for people to be quote unquote badasses. It's like, no, I actually appreciate Warrior and Hogan and Cena for being champions of children, because then those are the guys. Like when I was a kid, and I always say this, when I was a kid, man, I was a Hulkamaniac for sure. I wasn't a super Hulkamaniac because I was more into Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior. But there's a magic in having that hero as a kid that makes you a wrestling fan, And as adults, you don't appreciate that. You see it and you're like, oh, of course he always wins and yada, yada, yada. But when kids look at that, they see role models. They see superheroes. And as an adult, some people get upset about that and they don't like it. They want something edgier. They want something darker. And it's like, no, it doesn't need to be dark and it doesn't need to be edgy. It just needs to be cool. And Cena was cool. All right. We're finally at the end of the road. Thank you guys for listening. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, donate to the channel. We'll be doing another Q&A, likely maybe at the end of the month or maybe next month, however the performance of this video goes. But I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.